video. We're going in 30.
My name's Meg. I am chair for Better Staffs Forum. It's my first, so be kind. Thank you so much for everybody for being here today. You're going to get rewarded with pizza in no time. I'm going to run through some quick introductions. First, we have our panel on our left. If I could ask you guys just to state your name and your course.
My name's Rob. I'm on the Psychology and Counselling course here, and I'm also on the committee for Theme Park Society.
Hi, I'm Nat. I'm a Level 6 Sociology student and also the manager of the Mature Poems and Co Network.
I'm Dex Sims. I'm Computer Forensics first year.
My name's Damien Lomas. I'm a master's student in Theatre Practice by Negotiated Study and one of the LGBT network leads.
I'm Jamie Hosking. I am a first year game design student and I'm on the subcommittee for LGBT.
My name's Leonard Stewart. I'm a business student. I'm also on the committee for LGBT.
My name is Benjamin Humby and I'm on the committee for OMG.
My name's Dylan. I do modern and international history. That's what I do.
I'm Daniel and I do geography and mounted leadership.
Thank you. In our audience as well, we have our officers, President Tash Crump, Vice President Scott, and Tuesday there's been apologies given by our other Vice President, Steph. Just to establish some quick ground rules, if and when you have a point, please raise your hand and wait for me to ask you to speak. I'll allow for polite applause if anybody has an awesome point, but please no booing, hissing, shouting, etc. I think if we could move on to our next slide, we have some very brief officer updates, which we're going to skip past because I think we have a officers meeting, unless anybody has any pressing questions for our officers. No? Okay, next slide. Oh, it's that one. So we'll move on to some ideas that have been submitted to the union. These have been coming through social media or directly to the union. Once the idea has been put forward, I will invite some comments, concerns, ideas, etc. From the audience, from the panel, and from the officers. If a vote is required, I shall pass it to the panel. If 75% of the panel vote for the motion will pass. If over 50% but under 75% have voted for the motion, a broader online vote will be taken. If 75% of the panel vote against the motion, it has failed. Failed motions can't be raised again this academic year. The first is Uni Card machines in venues. So the slide hasn't been updated, but we do have an in-person update from me because we're working with kind of live ammunition here. It was put to the website about paying for things on your Uni Card. That has actually been solved because it is already in place, the ability to add money to your Uni Card. You can do that through our website, and then you can use it to buy stuff all over the campus. So we'll skip past that one if that's okay. So the second topic was transport to and from other campuses. So it's been asked of us to examine whether we can and should establish transportation to and from other campuses at Blackheath Lane or Shrewsbury. Is the student that put that discussion forward present?
Yes.
That was you. Do you have any other points you'd like to add?
No, I just think that we have so much going on this campus and not much on the other campuses that we should, if possible, be able to transport students up so we can be completely connected and stuff like that, basically.
Does anyone have anything to raise about potential issues? Yep.
I know students who are from that study, I think it's at Blackheath Lane.
Hello. Yeah, sorry. I know a student that mentioned to me she does midwifery at Blackheath Lane, and she said that there's times where they all, as a class, need to go to Shrewsbury, for example, and it's just a lot more easier. And she asked whether she could get transport between the two locations as well for certain periods when the whole class are going back and forth. It just makes it easier. And considering we used to have a minibus going from Stafford to Stoke for so many years, I thought it'd be a good idea.
Did there any other points? Have we got any opposition to the idea? Officers, do you have any thoughts or any questions you'd like to put to the audience? No? No? Do you think any more information is required? Would you guys? Yeah?
Oh, yeah. So, I have a question. Is it the union that would pay for this, or is the union going to lobby the university in order to pay for transport?
I think it should be a mixture of both.
Is one of the officers able to talk about the finances?
So for us, it's actually easier to lobby the university due to the fact that we have a set budget for the year, and we obviously have to sort out that budget at the start of the year. If we had the money to be able to buy a minibus, looking at Ken now, if we had the money to be able to buy a minibus, I think that we probably would have done that already. Yeah, Scott's nodding. So I think that for us, it's actually better for us to lobby the university because it's linked with university courses and it's linked with the university trying to get students connected. So I think that's something that we can probably look into doing.
So I've already had conversations with the university about trying to get a minibus. They are completely looking into it, but I think the biggest difficulty at the moment is students who actually study at Blackheath getting to Blackheath Lane in the first place. So once we resolve the issue of getting people from the train station who are commuting to Blackheath Lane much easier, then that'll open up the question of getting to other campuses as well, if that makes sense.
Are there any other points? Anybody got any issues, any worries, concerns? No? Can I put forward the motion to the panel then about lobbying the university? If you're all happy with the information you've had. So those in favour of lobbying the university, potentially? Nice and easy. Motion passed. Okay. So the next one, I don't mind, lockers. Easy enough. So some students would find it useful to have a safe place to leave books, gym gear, etc. during the day. Again, is the student that put this idea forward present? No? No? Okay. So what does everyone think? Any ideas? Any points of contention? Yeah?
So the person who put this forward is actually my network. I'm the commuter student network lead. All the commuters think they want some lockers because it's much easier for us to, as a commuter student, you're lugging around all your books every single time you come in. It's just much easier to leave them in a safe place and then you can go around the campus as freely as what a normal student could be. So, yeah, lockers, good for commuter students.
You guys have any?
I think the only downfall to that would be the amount of lockers that we'd potentially have to get, because if it's a case of getting lockers so people are able to store their books so they can go to a lecture without having to haul things around, then a lot of people are going to need them. So it's a case of a system would need to be put in place in regards to those lockers. So I think it's something that would need to be further thought out in terms of numbers, how it's going to work. Is it going to work in like a case of a booking system where it's an electronic one so you can scan your student card to store your books and things like that. So I do think a bit more research may be needed into how we would do this.
Has anybody got any? Oh, yeah.
Would it be a little bit more fair if we gave it to commuter students first? If like there was, say, something on their card that said that that person was a commuter student, so they're the only people that are able to access them lockers? Or would it be something that all students would be able to access? Because I think Ashley said there's about 100 and something commuting part-time students, I believe. In the network. I don't know how many.
There's over 4,000 students.
Okay, there's 4,000. I didn't know that. So yeah, 4,000 commuting alone, and then you've got the rest of the students. So maybe it's a lot of lockers, but I mean, maybe for certain days or booking, like Damien said.
Yeah, so to counterpoint to all that, what the idea had in mind was that we wouldn't buy 4,000 lockers for students. That's just mad. What we'd do is that you'd buy a certain number of lockers, probably say, I don't know, let's say 200. It's a mad number, just put it out now, but let's say we put 200 lockers. Commuter students would then probably have access first to those lockers as they're people of the most need. The system would know they're a commuter student because when on, I think it's not Blackboard, but the portal site, eVision, that's it, thank you, Scott. On eVision, it does say, are you commuting? Yes, you are a commuter student, well done. Using that, you'd be able to have priority. The system would know that. I mean, if you wanted to, you could probably book out a locker for a day and say, right, your locker is number 172. That is your locker. You have it for a day or however long you want it for. That's how the system would work. So even though it hasn't actually officially gone into it, the thought process, there is some ideas there that could be used and, you know, could be done.
Sorry, I think you had a question first.
When you say like lockers for commuter students, would that be for local commuters or distant commuters? How far a commuter has to come? Affect the first come first served basis. I mean, I'm a commuter student, but I only live down the road, whereas there's some that come in from other places.
I think my point is, while it's a good idea for commuter students, it would be a case of if we were to do this straight away, then it would need to be accessible to disabled students as well, because they'd benefit just as much as commuter students would. So it's a case of we'd need to make it as fair as possible. I think making it just for commuter students straight away would not be the best way to go about it.
That was my point as well.
I was just going to say, it shouldn't be really a thing of like, it should be part of a specific school or specific group. It should be a thing of where if you want a locker, if you acquired a locker, if you need a locker, you should ask for one. You should request a locker, and if so, you can get one in return. Obviously, if it's for a certain group, okay, you're going to have either a lot of lockers or you're going to discriminate against other groups that want to have lockers who can't get lockers. You can have a big mess.
As somebody who knows the person who put forward this motion, do you know, was there a plan in place for where they would go, or?
No.
No.
No,
okay.
the student, first year.
So my point is, I think this is a really good idea, but it really needs to be regulated, because you're going to upset students who are based on campus and students who aren't, because they're going to think, well, if they get lockers, why don't we? Even if they live sort of 2 minutes around the corner or at the top end of Hanley Park, it's going to upset people. So I think this is going to be a really difficult thing to implement, and it's going to be an expensive thing to implement. I think that's really what we've got to think of from a practical point of view, is how many people are we going to upset by doing this or not doing this?
So this has actually been on the university's radar for a while now. So being vice president last year, but then also hearing from Darren and Swetha from their first year of being vice presidents, this has been something that has been talked about for years now. And it is down to the fact that I think that trying to work out the logistics, like what everyone's been saying, it needs to be available for all students, but it does need to be focused on for disabled students and commuter students, because those are the students that will actually benefit from having the lockers the most. But also on top of that, it's looking at what about if somebody then doesn't give up that locker? What about if they go, this is now my locker? And then they just take over it, and then that means that that's then one locker gone. And so I think that what the university are trying to do is, this isn't something that's just been pushed behind closed doors for them. This is something that does keep coming up, and it is something that they do talk about. But I think that all the questions that you're all asking are the questions that they're also asking and trying to work out, actually, how do we get around all of these different obstacles that could potentially get in the way of actually putting lockers in place. So it is something that is being talked about.
anybody got any final points to add? Yeah.
Another thing is as well, like of the commuter students, some of them might be commuting by car, so they're able to put the stuff away, and then you wouldn't want those students to kind of abuse the system and be like, well, I need a locker too. Well, you've got your car. There's some students that go by train and they've got all their books with them. So then how would you figure out who's got a car and who hasn't?
Yeah, just to end it. So I commuted by train for 2 years, and for a 2-hour train journey every day here and back, it's hell. It is absolutely hell. It's horrible. I don't know how many of you are commuters who commute by train or by bus or by car, but it's absolutely awful. I recommend doing it for a year, and you will want lockers. Now, you've heard all the logistics arguments. Do not vote this argument down based on logistics, because they can be sorted out. Think about the idea on the whole, is all I say when you go for a vote. Logistics can be sorted out, but is the idea good? I think so.
Any final points?
As an alternative to the idea of lockers, could you not look into another storage location, such as a building that isn't being used, either union or university, just a communal cloak space, as it were? Even if that were then just a case to put your bag, I know there would then be issues of looking after it, numbering, that sort of thing from a logistical standpoint. But as Ashley stated there, logistics can be ironed out. And I don't know if maybe using a cloakroom that had someone on the door would be an easier way of getting around it as opposed to using lockers.
Has the idea of a cloakroom, staffed cloakroom, come up in place of a...
Security issue there. It's the, you're hiring.
It's that you're hiring the person to man it, like basically 24/7.
Yeah.
Because if someone's left the thing there, you'd have to say, well, if it's there, we're going to lock the door at 8 or whenever it is. So you're trusting someone with all your belongings. Whereas with a locker, say if you've got your Uni Card, you can just press the button, opens up just for you. Maybe for the university as well, if you overstay your due. But I think it's the security of a locker which outweighs a cloakroom.
In place of taking a formal vote, because it's already kind of being discussed within the union, could I just get a quick show of hands from you guys who think this is something that the university really need to push, those in favour of lockers? Okay. I'm going to keep that in the hands of the union then, with the officers. I think probably the biggest point of contention is perhaps students not seeing the outcomes of conversations regarding lockers.
Can I ask, who commutes? Can I show us who's a commuter?
What would you consider a commuter?
Someone who doesn't live on campus. Okay.
We're going to move on then, I think. What's the next? Right. So the former Cadman reception conversion into study skills space. Is the student that raised this motion here? No. Okay. I have a summary. So since the student hub was launched in September, the space has been marginally used by students, partially due to frequent rotation of furniture available in the area. In recent years, there's been an ongoing issue with availability of rooms for study skills and mentor sessions for students who possess a learning support agreement, often leading to disruptions of their studies if they can't find an environment to hold these sessions in, especially for students with sensory or learning disabilities. Yes, Dash.
So when we saw this come up on the big ideas section, it was one of those where it's a really good idea because of the fact that obviously it then means there is more space for then students to actually get the skills that they need, etc. However, as a union, we physically cannot turn a university space into something else, because where it's university estates, it would be the university that would have to change that. So the only thing that we could do is put this forward to the university as a suggestion, because we can't actually change a university space. The only space that we could possibly change within the union, but we don't actually have any free space in the union, so we can't do that.
And I've already made the suggestion to turn this space into a hot food area, which I think is being considered. So if this was to pass, I'd have to make a re-suggestion of saying students don't actually want that, they'd want this instead. So just bear that in mind when you're discussing this as a panel.
Yeah, so I am a disabled student and I do have this a mentor. What usually happens is I will meet my mentor in the Cadman reception area, and we'll go up into the library. But due to the fact there isn't a dedicated space, we often have to kick someone out of the room or do something like that. And that area in the library is for studying as well. So what I would like to see is, I don't really mind where it is, but a dedicated space for these mentors to work with their students. So I think it is a good idea to actually get done.
Anybody else?
I think the only concern that I'd say on behalf of like constructing it is that would it be used? So you know, if you put a lot of money into it, are you going to get a good outcome? That's the only issue. So I mean, you have to obviously to, you know, do like probably like a survey to ask people if they want it. Okay, especially people who are disabled or have issues that need to be, you know, if you want a study space. But I think, you know, if you're putting a lot of money into conversion and there's no one going, it's just a bit of a waste. You know, obviously people will go, but it's.
I think it's a case of, if the space was to be turned into that, it would be used, but then it may leave people very conscious because it's such a wide open area. Like whenever I walk into the library, my eyes immediately turn there because it's a big space, and that may make people very conscious, even if you put booths in there and stuff like that. Because say if I saw one of my course mates, I mean I don't see my course mates because it's a negotiated masters, and I saw that they were struggling, they then may click of, oh, they're talking to me asking if I'm alright because of this, they've seen that I'm struggling, etc, etc. Whereas where it is at the moment, you don't really see that area, because as you're walking through, there's literally a wall in place. It's only if you go round to that corner you see the study skills team, and that area is a nice area. There's also a pod so you can speak privately if you need to, so it's open and closed at the same time. I think that area is good. And in terms of mentors, when it comes to those, you as students can say, this is where I prefer to meet. So if you prefer to meet in that space and just sit in that space because it's open and it helps you expand your thought process more, then that's absolutely great. Whereas if it's a case of you prefer to have a private room in the library, something that you and your mentor can then look at together to find the right space for you.
That could be your point.
Yeah, that covers my point. It's just that obviously with disabled students, I myself don't want to go into too much detail. I also don't want people to ask questions about like, oh, why were you with your mentor in that space? So the idea is great, but there definitely needs to be a consideration of where it is in regards to things like anxiety as well. But yeah, otherwise Damo pretty much covered it.
Anybody else from the audience? Given those concerns and that Scott has already raised the issue being turned into a hot food area, is more information required as to which students would think would be more beneficial to the student experience? And do we have the capability of putting that to a wider poll? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, in place of a vote then I'm going to suggest more information is required. Everybody's agreeing with that? Lovely. And the next point? Oh. Didn't we have building letters? We're not doing building letters. So that's that, unless anybody has any questions to put forward to the officers or to the panel. any of the panel?
Yeah, going back to your point about turning the open space into a hot food area, Scott, sorry, I get a mic. Would that be to replace Brindley when all that gets flattened, as it were?
It wouldn't replace, because I think there's current plans in the catalyst to have the similar sort of facilities that Brindley had, but expansion and things will be moved across campuses as well. But the hot food area, it'll be a couple of microwaves, a couple of seating areas. So if you do order a pizza from outside, you can bring it in, but also be in the same environment as the library, so you don't feel like you've got to walk over to another side of campus to eat your hot food and walk back. It's only a suggestion that's been made, but I think it is being considered. That's currently where we are. But if it is genuinely something that students want, I can push for it.
No, that's fine. I just wanted a bit more information on it, that's all. Thank you.
Have I covered everything?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have a question in regards to the university mentors and counsellors. I've had a student come up to me who has autism, and for those who don't know autism that well, there is a thing called the triad of impairment. So there's 3 particular things where they are, in a better word, lacking, and one person has come to me and they've basically explained that they are struggling to communicate in the way that they wish. And with someone who works with people with autism outside of university, I can see where they're coming from. I was just wondering if there is any form of mentor or advocate that can help and support them, or if there is anything for people who are on the autistic spectrum in terms of support and guidance, so that they can help themselves and go to them in a free environment.
I'm trying to think of what to say. So, I guess when it comes to university, especially with guidance counselling, we don't really get involved with what they're doing massively. We obviously work alongside them, especially with projects around mental health, making sure that we're raising awareness to actually help students. When it comes to the logistics of what they're doing behind the scenes, we don't really get involved with that. However, it is something that we can explore and actually ask them, because if they have got somebody who can help, then that's then what you would want / need for your friend.
Yeah, it does.
So if I could ask one of the officers to take a lead on some of the motions we've got, the idea of transportation to and from other venues. Oh yeah, sorry.
Sorry, just going back to what Scott was saying earlier about the hot food. Sorry, Scott. In terms of, like, you know, the area when you get into the library and you've got that on the right side, is there any way of, like, because I know it can get quite cold there, but is there any way of, like, I don't know, maybe creating like a room there or something where you can make that into the hot food area, so as soon as you walk in, it's there. So it's still right next to the library, and then you can still put the study skill space as possibly for those who've got learning difficulties, and to have that space for them and their mentors. Is that something that's possible, or?
Yeah, that's more than possible. It's going to be under the university's master plan. Currently, I don't even think the university know what they're doing with that building yet. So it's purely dependent on what their long-term plan is, what they do with that area. But as a short-term thing, I think it can be done just to put up a wall. But it's going to be me having a further conversation with the university to see what can be done and how that fits in with the long-term plan.
Are there any other points about the hot food area? No? Okay. So regarding the transportation to and from other campuses, if I could leave that in the hand of one of the officers, that'd be Scott. Yeah. you're not. You're okay. And the further discussion of the lockers will be you, Tash. And further discussion of the conversion of Cadman reception into a study school space versus the hot food area, I think probably needs to be put to a... Yeah? Yeah? Yeah. Lovely. And that's us. So all outcomes of today's meeting will be available online in the next couple of weeks for all students to be aware of. And that's us, I think. Thank you so much for coming today. And if there's no other points, we'll call that a day.